Hi, welcome back to Decolonizing Research Through Podcast as Storytelling. I'm your host, Jessica Hum, and I'm back here for a second episode with our next guest, whose name is Janet Rabesca. Janet is a Clicho citizen and a role model to youth. She's someone who really values helping others. Janet has an immense knowledge of traveling safely on her traditional lands, and just so you can get situated where we're talking about, in our interview, Janet talks frequently about Clicho lands and waters, the Marion River watershed specifically, which is north of Great Slave Lake. From the time that I first met Janet in 2015, when I joined the Clicho government in the Northwest Territories, I knew I wanted to work with her to help people heal through connecting back to the land. And finally, in 2018, I had the opportunity to work really closely with Janet on 2 on-the-land trips. It was an amazing summer. We first went on the Clicho traditional trails of our ancestors canoe trip. We canoed from Bachako to where the annual gathering was taking place that year, which was in Wati. And secondly, in that summer, we also produced Camp Kichi at White Beach Point, which was on Great Slave Lake. Of course, we didn't do these things alone. We were working with a large team of really amazing people, and Janet was absolutely a critical piece of keeping people safe and their well-being intact when traveling on the land. Those were really memorable trips, and since then, I've been reflecting on how I can have deeper conversations with Janet and amplify her voice. So I will let Janet introduce herself, and then we'll get on with our interview. Here we go. How would you like to be introduced, and how do you want people to know who you are?
You ask difficult questions. In any way, form that you like. Go with the flow. You can introduce me as a Clicho, as a researching student, just trying to find solutions, ideas, any way possible, just to keep rejuvenating, revitalizing our Dene cultures.
Awesome. That's a great introduction to you, Janet. Who you are, what you're doing.
I'd like to thank you and say merci for having me a part of this research. For so long, I've been trying to find mentorship, trying to find help in a university faculty that's outside of the North. It's very difficult when you grew up a completely different lifestyle and having to adjust to today's lifestyle.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I hear you, sister, because that's where I'm at, too. I mean, we both grew up in different places and different lifestyles for sure.
Yeah.
And there's definitely challenges to coming to a place where you don't know anybody. And I feel like we can connect over that. We're both navigating this academic world. Before we started today, you had asked me to make an offering, a water offering. We talked about this like a couple weeks ago, actually. And so I had prepared, and every day I do a meditation, but actually today I did a specific meditation on my water. And I made a prayer before I made this water offering to the land here in Mi'kma'ki.
Merci.
Merci. Well, merci to you. Thank you for encouraging me, and I've been thinking about how this offering goes about, and actually Mi'kma'ki people here often use tobacco or other medicines, but it's your message to me really reminded me that we as women have a special role to play with water and protection.
Yes, very, very, very utmost important in we have sustainability, survival, and being water is one of the biggest surviving tool that we have. We have to treat it like us, like anything, like it's alive, in caring and in hopes of safety and encouraging of others and blending of all traditional insights. It's just natural. It's just natural way of giving thanks to all that's all around us, and in any way, form. That could be the water, the skies, the fish, the animals down under, anything that helps us keep the will of survival. Because I grew up with my grandparents and my nomadic great-grandparents up on the Marion River watershed, it was just as powerful as just being alive. Just for the incentive of not knowing what tomorrow is, not knowing the hour. So what better way to give thanks for your life is, it's kind of like a universal greeting to give thanks for what we have, for being alive, and not knowing in time if there is a goodbye or not, because we don't have goodbyes in our language, but just to the security, acknowledgement, and the respect of things. It I believe falls into every nation on this planet, and we do things a little bit different. We're all different. We go on different paths, different journeys, and but simply the offering is all the same. We might not have tobacco or other cedar or other sage or clays or whatever other cultures use. It was just to bring back, it's like a recycling, just bring back and offer what is given to us. And that's the teaching that I grew up with. Always appreciate what is alive, and always give, because that aura that we all have is just for like good luck purposes and a greeting. So yeah, that's just the things that we grew up with, and I can't speak for any other family, although we are all one Clicho nation, but we're all neighboring nations, neighboring families, and we kind of, each and every family, do things a little bit different, more recent, maybe a little more post. But rather the teachings all have a similarity and an insight.
Yeah, of course, Janet, I'm only asking from your own perspective, but I am totally seeing some similarities in the thankfulness, in showing gratitude. And I love just how you just touched on, we don't know when is our own end, the end of ourselves, the end of our relationships with, the earth, with each other. So to always be thankful, right? Like, oh, I so appreciate every time we would go on the land, or to have important meetings and discussions about the land, we would give thanks in that way. Yeah.
Love of everything, even the little bugs have a purpose. There's always, like I said, the recycling portion of things. Like you use what you have, and some may be edible, some may not. Some might be in terms of life survival. So it's all just having respect for kind of like the well of survival, and having to adapt and change within our own indigenous cultures to survive. That is an enormous change. It's brought big impact, and especially with the colonialism, and it's very hard to balance, but as individuals, we have to balance of our mind, balance of all that is. So that's just the teachings that we grew up with, and I'm very thankful grateful for those teachings, and most importantly, my family, my grandfather Jimmy Gaughan, and Annie Gaughan, the Gaughan family, and Janet Rabesca, and the people of Marion Lake. Language has really had a big impact, even with the local dialects. We all might be a neighboring family, but we all have our own little dialects. So we're very lucky with language. It's always changing, but yet the meanings are still the same. And will for survival with language is ongoing, and it's always ongoing, and we have to change to survive. We have to accept it. And for me, it's been a really big ordeal because I didn't grow up with English. It was very hard because over time, religion was brought on to us. So in a sense, we might have been nomadic. I think we're still nomadic. The things that we may still do. But just in sense of a prayer, even with the religious changes, the difference, the thousands and hundreds of religions out there, but that insight is still the same, the will of respect, the will to keep going. So, it took a lifetime of learning and struggles and having to teach ourselves to read and write, rely on the religious system, the school system, government systems to keep that alive. So yeah, there's always a path of success, and what doesn't work, you gather information, you gather solutions, you make changes, and that's how changes occur over time. Sometimes for the best, sometimes not, but the will of survival is still there.
The changes to land, water, and wildlife. Who's monitoring these changes, or like what changes are you seeing, and what information are you gathering from that?
I believe, I am so thankful for being Clecho, being Dene, being from the north, has certainly brought on some challenges. And being raised by my grandparents, Johnny and Marion Rabesca, the change over time with not just the climate, but of all things, like what's up in the sky, like the cosmology, the way the earth is, the way how things move. For example, getting back to the language, I'm only 45 years old. I speak an old Clecho dialect that most of my peers my age don't speak. So that creates a little bit of confusion. It creates a little bit of conflict. But we're still learning from it, and I myself have to learn how to adjust. I have to learn how to evolve around that. So with the climate change, what I've noticed was just the adaptation of communal living through colonialism, and having to live in both the westernized society and the indigenous cultures. That's a huge climate change itself. But with the teachings from my upbringing is very different. It varies from family to family again. What I've seen in my lifetime is the nomadic, the migration of animals, the migration of people, the will to survive with the traditional foods and supplies and materials is almost no longer required, but kind of essential. Even though with the hunting and the trapping, it's no longer there. I remember waiting for for example, for my father, Johnny Rabesca, who was a dog trapper going out towards Deering Lake, the Arctic Ocean, towards an adamant hunter, a trapper in the Contuedo, the Arctic, just by himself, and being able to survive there for several months out of the year, not knowing if he was going to come home or what happened, because that communication technology wasn't there. But in all, we knew that he was coming back. He was destined to come back. We just didn't know when. So it was very challenging. It's very dangerous, even with the safety. The old timers, the nomadic people, the woodsman people, always had a way of traditional navigating through landmarks, through markings, and through insects, through birds, through animals, through fishing, the flora, the ecology. It's all like a reverse cycle now. It's almost like a foreign to us now, having to learn new ways again to survive in our traditional lifestyle. So that means having to adjust to the climate, the weather system has changed. The building of the ice roads, the materials and supplies of transportation into communities. All that was done by a dog team. Now it's airplanes and all that modernized technology, and still having to adjust to it. And the earth is changing too fast. People are changing too fast. The technology is changing too fast. And coming from such a traditional nomadic people and area, it's a very fast-forwarding lifestyle for us. So it's bad enough having to deal with colonialism, but the adjustments and having to rely back on the government now, it's reversing itself. History is reversing itself now. With the onset, like for example, even though we're coming near spring season, for example, with all the birds migrating across, the insects migrating across, our nomadic people don't know about technology. They don't know much about the outside world and what other tribal people and what the worldly people are doing, and the vast changes that it's making amongst every single one of us in every culture. Even something simple for you and I in readable in the English word is a big ordeal. It's life-changing, and you have to be ready to make those changes, or we're going to get left behind. And that is the one thing that the Klitschko government is learning to do. Every nation is learning to do. And I can't thank them enough. I am happy to be Dene. I'm happy to be Klitschko. Having to get to know many people from across the world, students, ordinary people, First Nations. You learn a lot. You learn a lot from them. They learn a lot from you. And with that, you learn to get through the climate changes, and not everybody's going to be for it. Not everybody is going to be accepting to changes, and that's another thing we have to work on, and that's another part of respect, having to respect things that's new to us. And so the industry, the economic, the resource, everything's changed through the watersheds. We're only a small country. We might be big in land, but we have to adjust to everybody else on Earth, and our people don't know stuff like that. So it takes a lot of research, a lot of convincing people that we have to prepare ourselves, and they may not live the same 50 years ago, but through oral communication and solutions, and we're even doing it through now via podcast, learning and adapting. So it's very it's devastating, but yet intriguing, interesting, and as myself learning to research for my love of reading, that's also changed my perception of our cultures, and trying to teach my family, my people, teaching them about what the outer world is like, and what they're experiencing and what they're doing. So,
What you've shown me in how we were working together at White Beach Point was that if someone is unwell, that the land can provide things that you need. And that's part of adaptation, right? Like I remember being on the phone with you on the sat phone, and that was our way of communicating. It's so interesting to contrast with the times when your elders would go out on the land with dog teams, and you wouldn't know when you would see them again, right? Like you just had to have faith and trust, and they knew the medicines that they needed if they got sick. But you have that knowledge too, and you've been sharing that in such wonderful ways. So,
just coming back to our family upbringing with our nomadic travels, and through stories of the elders, using what you have, and being able to, that all falls back into adaptation, the will of survival. Everything has a purpose. Everything has healing powers. We just gotta go search for it and believe in it and make it work. It's just like a part of society today. What doesn't work, you find other solutions to work. And our people didn't have much. All we had was the land. And you learn by experimenting. You learn by making things. If one medicine didn't work, you tried something else. And it wasn't just, it's all around. It's not just about plant medicine. It's about animal medicines as well. And learning to adapt and using it. So I didn't really have a choice. Kids will be kids, people will be people, cultures are cultures, and we all make mistakes. Accidents happen, and I'm just notorious for that. And having to make it, my grandma make medicines. I was always there, just at the right time, the right place. I don't know what it is. Even with our fish camps, for example, every year we had camped at the Seagull Rapids, which is the first rapid going up in the watersheds. not knowing about fish animals and being in our fish camp, not knowing why we're making dry fish and all this stuff. And then just through communication, loving your family, being with your family and participating. That is so important. Experiencing and you just learn how to do stuff and you learn to take part in it. And from there, you just go from there. Even for example, during our spree camp, even something simple as a jackfish bladder, that was a huge medicine in my family. Having to dry it and not knowing what it was for, and then having my grandparents take it out later on in the season to use it. Simple things like that you remember through participating. And what busy way to keep yourself busy is just by practicing, right? So just learning not to be afraid. When you show fear, I learned that nothing gets done. And by challenging these fears, you make mistakes. And from those mistakes, you learn to move on. And for me, that's just the will of survival. Not everybody had that gift of foraging and looking. It just takes simple things as just looking around, and it's like building a house. It's like cooking, just being able to think about it and find a reflective solution. Well, it's kind of like, what if I try this? What's going to happen? Well, if that doesn't work, what do I do? Try something else. Hey, that works. That plant didn't work. Let's mix that plant with another medicine. And today, don't you call that the drugstore? Everything in the drugstore is indigenous. They just put drops of other minerals and chemicals, and they call it something fancy. And we didn't grow up with money. Money is wood, so it's burnable, right? So, but even through that, you find through colonialism, you get to find other medicines as well, right? So it's all, in all, the will of survival, I think. There's no hocus pocus, there's no magic, there's no secret. It's just all where you've been, the teachings you learn, to listen. That's a huge process in adapting to climate change. The stories from before, the stories of now, even the birds, if you learn to listen to the birds, they will show you signs of danger. And through those dangers, you learn medicines, right? So even a bird has medicines through things like singeing its feathers. So I've been just very lucky that being the first grandbaby that I was taken by my grandparents to experience this. And I'm very thankful. I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate. And my love for reading and utilizing tools and not being able to challenge, being afraid of challenge outside your culture, to even challenge your culture, that's a no-no, but you got to survive, right? Our forefathers, our family learned how to survive by trapping on the land alone. So I kind of look at it that way. And having grandparents that were very, having family that is, that were understanding. So I think my first readings was through the helicopter runs on the Tower Hill for forestry that I learned how to read through my older brothers. And I think one of the funniest stories was I have to bring this up because religion was really forced on us, and it's hard for people to mend through that, to heal through that. But even with that, it's a learning tool. You learn to utilize it. So I think for a while in my reading elementary years, I think I confused a lot of the elders because I read a lot of Hindu books. So I think my first Catholic was a Hindu teaching. So, just a funny story. Not knowing what Jesus was or with what God was, but that spirituality of feeling better, and spirituality is a part of kinship, and kinship is a part of your family. Family is a part of your life. Your life is a part of your culture and your traditions. So you just got to learn to balance and blend things all like together. And
well, you just said something in that last answer that was really meaningful to me, because this podcast is about story listening, right? Like that's my job, is the story listening. And you've reminded me that the stories don't just come from people. The stories come from the animals, the water, the land, like really learning to listen and practice that.
And then even through like original stories, like even though it's been millions of years back, oral communication is utmost important. It's like a growing with time, essentially. And just back to like making examples of our nomadic people and the changes of today. Not to be in disrespect of anything, but on a crucial critical thinking. With all these changes, it's my job, or I feel that as a youth, or not a youth, a younger generation that understands a little bit about technology. For example, with colonialism, the mining industry is one of the biggest destruction to our nations and land and the animals and all things around. But trying to make people understand, when you speak like this, we're not for, we're not against, but to make them understand in a way, because there's no words in English, you have to oralize, make examples for them to understand. And this is where the younger generation, such as me, I believe, utilize these tools are important in this kind of regime, because, for example, even though we have great interpreters from the generations before us, working in all levels of government, for example, they still lack breaking things. They still lack bringing down that understanding to simplicity to make them understand. And usually people like me are rejected, or there's always conflict, because we're trying to make them understand about adapting. Even though the mines and the government allow these things to happen on our land, these mines are crucial in a way. These minerals are crucial. The world and the earth, the universe is changing so much that we have to change for survival, but our oral and communication is always there. It's there as a guard. It's there as a God. It's there for a resource to reflect back on if we need to look back. But coming back to the mining, just making them understand that something so destructive can be life-saving, such as you and I talking, right? That's lithium. That's through that mining, we're able to communicate, to educate, and then through mining, the medical supplies that we so need today for our scans, the MRIs, the research. Even with climate change, how do you explain that? How do you explain the parasites, the diseases in the glaciers? How do you explain the floods? How are you going to explain the mountains that are about to explode to make the new beautiful islands and the mountains, to make new animals? It's all a part of evolution, and even animals have to change to survive. And for them to, for our cultural people to understand that more so, the elders, it's a very challenging, and it's hopefully it'll work through a lot of communication. But even with their landmarkers, their oral stories are helping the technology today. So it's a combination of everything that is so hard to rectify, to justify, to live by. And we just got to keep going. And it's funny how the earth and the world works, because today, with all the destruction, even the word prophecy is new. We didn't have prophecies back then, but oral communication, our prophecies are the landmarkers. Like for our example, the stories of Yamaza. In the Western Eye Society, they make it look like a storybook. The Bible is a storybook. It's ongoing. It's still ongoing. So just being able to relate all things and having to interpret these words that are foreign to us is doable. You just got to explain it in simple ways, kind of like baby steps, and just learn from it. Even these ancient landmarks have a story or two or three to tell, and that's also important for the earth in rejuvenating itself, I guess. So yeah, it's just being, we're not stuck in both worlds, but having the advantages of living both worlds and being able to oralize them to our people through communication.
There's a lot of things that have come out of, the beauty and the destruction that's happening in our minds and our systems. And I want to get back to also in terms of what we're doing, we are decolonizing.
Yes.
Right now, and through this conversation, and then through what I hope, you want to continue being. I think that we're both lifelong students here, Janet. It doesn't matter what age.
Oh.
I'm almost 40 myself.
My nation keep asking me, my friend, family, Janet, how many years have you been going to school? Aren't you graduated yet?
Doesn't matter.
That's exactly it. I don't want to stop.
Yeah.
And then it's just not one course. It's not one career. Mm-hmm. It's not one program. It's the vastness of the programs and studies and the resources. It's just mind-blowing and so interesting that it's also addicting, and I don't want to stop. I want to become an ecology professor. I want to do so many things. I want to be home. I want to be able to interpret. I want my people to train me. We've been asking for interpreting training since what? I was 15. I'm 45 now. Our people are crying for people like us, but again, living by colonial ways, having to challenge what's not right, having voice, also creates a lot of conflict. But if we didn't have conflict, we wouldn't live, right? Like I said, being a part of the animal kingdom, we experience the will of survival, and unfortunately, I come from trapping nomadic families. Our people don't have any clue what it's like to go to school. There might be a little bit of understanding, but they just don't understand the struggles. And I wish other institutions, other faculties would recognize that. That's been one of, I guess, with my personal educational journey, is the financial struggles.
Right.
It causes a lot of stress in our learning, in our progression. We don't have student housing outside of Aurora College. Everything is mainstream. Everything is market price, and having to have more faculties that are willing to take us on.
Are you also talking about like how institutions come to your community and they gather data and they gather information, so then but there's you're talking about this non-reciprocity, like this take but not give?
Yes, that same in that way. Thank you for clearing that and making it more simple. That's exactly what I'm saying. Even that alone, it's getting better. It's getting better with time. It's just about overall progression. Through this technology, other institutions are reaching up for me as well, recognizing that, hey, this is a learning tool. It is an asset. So it's what's needed, and let's get it going. So, yeah, I think it's just a universal thing of ideas and solutions.
Yeah. Cool, Janet. I know it's partly like because we're reaching out and talking. We're just talking, and we're having a recording, and we'll put it on the internet and put it out there, and maybe that'll lead to more, connections, more talking. You and I, we could continue this. Like, I don't know where this podcast is going. I don't know who's going to listen to it besides you and me and my teachers.
Yeah, I think Klecho people, the Dene people of the Subarctic, are very learning to adapt fast, learning to adapt good. Who doesn't have challenges, and who doesn't have failures? And I can't stress enough how lucky I am, because having to experience so many different cultures and cities throughout Canada, that the things that Klecho people are doing is just phenomenal. It's amazing. And I can't stress that enough. Like, even living both ways in most Western societies, or I usually get the feedback that old ways are no more, kind of attitude, like incentive, and no. Quechua people are adjusting fine. We're adapting fine, and it's just going to take that many more research, the more the merrier, to keep preserving, reconciliating, and keep revitalizing, and that's the way to go.
Yeah, cool. Oh, I sure hope so. It's very hopeful, and it's grounded in a place of like it's grounded in your place of knowing and the love of your ancestors. Must see. Well, I hope it's continuing. We've worked together for a couple years now.
Oh, yes.
And we will still keep in touch.
Okay, you have a good day, and I'll talk to you later.
Must see. Stay well.
Must
Thank you, Janet. Bye-bye. So that concludes the interview number 2 with Janet Rabesca here on the podcast, Decolonizing Research Through Podcast as Storytelling. And there were a lot of stories that Janet just shared. It seemed as if every topic that we wanted to cover of the 4 themes, Janet had at least one really insightful story based on her family's experience. She had, starting with the water offering that she had encouraged me to make here in my own place of residence in Mi'kma'ki. And that was really a practice of her traditional ways of being, an encouragement for me to really consider decolonizing methodologies here and starting our research off on the right foot. And then she also talked about the resilience of her 4 fathers and 4 mothers. She talked about 2 different sets of grandparents there, the Gon family as well as the Rabesca family. And those are very prominent family names in Betchako in her home community up by Marion River and the Marion watershed. As well, Janet spoke a lot about healing and adaptation to changing circumstances, changing climate, changing economies. She talked about mining, and it's got a double meaning, or it has both good and bad aspects to it. And so we spent a little bit of time also talking about the changes that she's seen up on her traditional territories due to economies. And I wanted to also highlight that she spoke a little bit about Yamoza, who is featured in Quechua oral stories as one of the origin stories. And that is a really important part of oral communication, is passing down stories on the landscape of Yamoza's travels. And when Janet was speaking about cosmology and the origins of, being and finding your way through stars in the landscape, it really comes back to stories from Yamoza. And they aren't just storybooks and cute little pictures like she describes, because Yamoza stories have been made into books that children can comprehend. But they are also still really alive, very much in terms of stories on the landscape that I heard myself on the trails of the ancestors, as well, that Janet is keeping alive through actions like this, through the podcast. And it was really nice to also just reflect on how we are able to connect this way virtually at this time through the internet. We were using Facebook, and so sometimes some of the stories, we were using Facebook as the medium to communicate, and I was recording the conversation, but the internet was coming in and out. And so it sometimes sounded like Janet was like a virtual robot, or my questions weren't coming through as clearly. And so through some editing, I've been able to bring back just the best audio for you to hear on the podcast. But it's an evolving process, and so I'd love to hear some feedback and hear about, reactions. And as this project moves forward, it's going to evolve and change and adapt and help us to all be more resilient in the face of unknown, in the face of change. So here's to going with the flow, and here's to future podcast episodes that are coming your way soon. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.